I keep noticing a lot of chart analysts comparing today's market setup to the 2017 cycle rather than the 2021 run, at least in certain respects. And honestly, I think that's amazing because if you remember 2017, especially for altcoins, that run completely transformed lives in a way 2021 really didn't, though. Don't get me wrong. There were still plenty of opportunities back then too. What really excites me is seeing respected analysts calling for an even bigger move this time, particularly highlighting Ethereum and XRP. And considering XRP was the single best performing crypto during the 2017 bull run, well, that's music to my ears. So today I want to walk you through the outlook from several analysts who are laser focused on XRP. But before diving in, just a quick note, I don't have a professional financial background and nothing I say should be taken as investment advice. This is just me sharing my thoughts as a hobbyist who loves talking about crypto on YouTube. Now, I get it, we've been chopping sideways over the last couple of days, but trust me, this won't last forever. As I record this, it's 1:41 p.m. Central Time on Saturday, August 16th, 2025. Right now, XRP is trading around $3.10, and Bitcoin is sitting at $117,891. And from where I'm standing, the signals we're seeing are exactly the same ones that have historically led into explosive altcoin seasons. So whether you believe this setup looks more like 2017 or more like 2021, the key point is the market is loaded and ready. We haven't seen it this primed in years. Don't let the recent pullback, triggered by inflation, data, shake your confidence. That little dip isn't enough to stop what's building. We're right on the edge, folks. Big things are about to unfold. I want to highlight a recent post from chart analyst Mikey Bull Crypto, because he pointed out something really important that I've also been keeping my eye on daily. Bitcoin's market cap dominance chart. Here's what he said. While Bitcoin is still holding in its weekly range, its dominance looks ready to take a major dive. And that's fantastic news for altcoins. I couldn't agree more, and I expect this trend to pick up speed as we move forward. Now, to be clear, that doesn't mean Bitcoin itself is going to crash. In fact, the price is still projected to climb higher. If history plays out anything like it has before, we've still got one last parabolic surge coming for Bitcoin, an idea that plenty of top analysts support. But here's the exciting part. As Bitcoin dominance continues to drop, altcoins are positioned to explode. What we've already seen so far is incredibly encouraging. And if your goal is to build wealth through alts, this is exactly the setup you want to see. This is the kind of opportunity that only comes around once every 4 years. And when it hits, altcoins aren't just going to move, they're going to absolutely rip. Let's take a look at some insights from Santiment, a top-tier on-chain analytics firm. These guys are incredibly data-driven, and I really like their work. They recently shared a post tracking mentions of words like lower, below, and higher above. In conversations around Bitcoin and Ethereum price levels, what they pointed out is pretty striking. The surge in greed around Bitcoin lined up exactly with its all-time high and local top. Meanwhile, Ethereum's community hasn't been nearly as euphoric, even though ETH has massively outperformed Bitcoin over the past 3 months. Think about that for a second. Ethereum was around $1,400 not that long ago, and today it's pushing close to a new all-time high. Yet the sentiment is fear. That right there is why I wanted to share this. The current emotional climate doesn't match what you typically see at market tops. Not even close. That tells me we've still got room to run. Santiment went on to explain that because retail sentiment usually moves opposite of price, the outlook for Ethereum looks even stronger. There's less dip buying compared to Bitcoin, which is actually bullish. And honestly, I love seeing that, because Ethereum often leads the charge into altcoin season. Now, shifting gears, chart analyst Mustache posted an ETH BTC chart, and wow, this one has made a big comeback. Looking at it, I couldn't help but think of the XRP BTC chart. A year ago, XRP looked absolutely terrible against Bitcoin. It was sitting at near record lows. To most people, it looked like the end of the world. But historically, that actually signaled it was undervalued, not dying. And sure enough, XRP didn't go to zero because fundamentally, its case has never been stronger. We're seeing the same thing with Ethereum. Not long ago, ETH was in the gutter against Bitcoin and then it blasted higher. Markets always find their bottoms. The fundamentals never collapsed, so there was no logical reason to think Ethereum was finished. Mustache summed it up perfectly. This is the first time in 5.5 years that BTC has reclaimed the Gaussian channel event, the midline after, putting in a weekly higher low. He suggested this setup looks way more like 2017 than 2021, and I've got to say, the similarities really are striking. Looking at this, I know plenty of people right now are gripped by fear. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here feeling nothing but excitement. And the wild part? That makes me part of the minority. But I'm confident the majority is wrong here. There's only a tiny window in a cycle where everyone lines up, where fear flips into excitement for the masses. And when that happens, I'll be feeling the opposite. Because here's the truth. The higher prices go, the closer we get to the top. And everything right now is pointing toward a massive bubble building. And that's exactly what I want to see. I want that bubble to blow up as big as possible, so I can ride it up and then cash out on the way. The craziest price action always comes at the tail end of a cycle. It doesn't last long, but when it hits, wow, it's the most exciting part of the whole run. Next up, I want to share a chart from Analysts Galaxy. Looking at XRP USD, he noted that XRP's current structure resembles 2017, but this time, it's unfolding more slowly. On the weekly chart, he pointed out that back in 2017, it took 3 attempts before XRP fully broke into price discovery. Right now, he says, we're on attempt number 2. Now, I want to add some thoughts here. While I do agree there are definitely similarities between XRP's current price action and the 2017 cycle, I highlight those on this channel often. Wouldn't necessarily compare this exact point in the chart to the green section Galaxy highlighted. Here's why. The pattern is pretty straightforward. You get a huge pump, not literally in one day, it can stretch out over weeks. Then the market chops sideways for around 6 months, sometimes longer. After that, you get a second major pump. Based on what we're seeing, I believe we've just entered that second phase. In Galaxy's chart, he marked this green zone after the first pump. For context, back in 2017, XRP ran from half a penny up to about 42 cents, then corrected down into the $0.20 south and spent about half a year consolidating before the explosive rally at the end of the year. So in my view, where XRP blasted off in late 2017 is actually the stage we're sitting in right now. That's the part of the chart I think best lines up with today's action. So yes, there are parallels, but I wouldn't compare today's market with the earlier section, Galaxy circled in green. If we're talking about historical patterns, I really liked a chart shared by Greg Crypto. This one's focused on XRP, but instead of price, it's tracking the Relative Strength Index, or RSI. Now, quick refresher for anyone who needs it. RSI is a momentum indicator that runs on a scale from 0 to 100. Sometimes you'll see numbers above 100 on charts, but those don't actually matter for RSI. It doesn't change the interpretation. Greg wasn't suggesting otherwise. Just want to clear that up in case you're wondering. Here's how it works. If an asset's RSI drops near 30 or lower, it's considered oversold, basically meaning the market sentiment has gotten to bearish, often to an unreasonable level. On the flip side, when RSI climbs to 70 or above, that's overbought territory, which means the market's getting overheated and price may be nearing a peak. That said, those 30 and 70 markers are just the general guidelines traders use. Different assets sometimes establish their own norms, where overbought or oversold conditions show up a little above or below those levels. What's fascinating about XRP is that when you look back at previous cycles, the RSI shows this repeating pattern over and over against cycle after cycle. And that repetition is exactly what makes this chart so interesting. And what's happening right now fits that same pattern perfectly, so it really shouldn't shock anyone. Here's how Greg Crypto broke it down. He called it the cycle of 3 when looking at XRP's monthly RSI. Step 1 is always the big cycle pump. Step 2 is the correction. Step 3 is the final blow off top. Now, think about this in terms of XRP's price action on the USD chart. During that first phase, you got the massive initial pump, the kind that pushed XRP's RSI to its highest reading in history. If I'm reading the chart right, that was around 97 out of 100. That's insanely overbought. Then, as you'd expect, the market cooled off. For about 6 months, XRP just moved sideways, and that's when a lot of people lost patience. You heard the complaints, XRP isn't moving, why am I even holding this? But really, the market was just resetting after being so overheated. After that consolidation, XRP blasted higher again. The RSI surged right back into overbought territory for the second time, and that marked the end of that cycle. From there, it rolled over, trended down, and eventually drifted closer to oversold levels over the following years. And you can see this repeating over and over again: big pump, correction, blow off, cool down, same rhythm cycle after cycle. And then in cycle 2, you see the exact same structure repeat. Price surges, cools off, moving sideways, then makes another strong push upward before eventually rolling back down. The rhythm is identical. It's essentially what's playing out again right now. As Greg Crypto explained, cycles 1 and 2 showed the same type of behavior, just at different magnitudes. But honestly, that makes perfect sense when you factor in the added headwinds, like the SEX attack on Ripple XRP, and frankly, the entire community. Even so, the structure still mirrors the past. Looking at today's setup, the monthly RSI for XRP is showing the same cycle once again. Step 1 done. Step 2 done. Step 3, the blow-off phase is now underway. So the real question becomes, how high does cycle 3 go? Greg laid out some potential peak targets: $1.80, $2.87, and $3.97. Now, personally, I don't like to throw out exact price predictions. That's not really my thing. But in terms of direction, absolutely. I expect XRP to go much higher. Could it reach levels like we saw in 2017? Possibly. I'm not ruling it out. But I'm also realistic. Today, we've got far more coins on the market, meaning more competition for capital. That makes it harder for XRP to reach those same extremes of overbought. Still, here's the key point. It doesn't need to reach those old highs to create life-changing wealth. Even a more modest move in this cycle could deliver massive gains. It's the same reason I'm not expecting XRP to reclaim 30% market dominance like it did 2 cycles ago. And that's okay. It doesn't have to for this run to be hugely profitable. XRP doesn't need to reclaim those exact dominance levels or RSI extremes for us to see double-digit prices and truly life-changing gains. That's the beauty of it. It doesn't have to get that crazy for this cycle to deliver. Now, when we start creeping up toward those high RSI levels again, you can bet I'll be talking about it here on the channel. That's the zone where I'll be saying, okay guys, we're getting a little overheated here. Because my goal isn't to nail the exact top. That's a losing game. Instead, I plan to scale out gradually as the price climbs. Hey, will it be a clean, perfect process? Of course not. It's going to be messy. The window of time to sell is so much shorter than the years we've had to accumulate. You can dollar cost average in for ages, but on the way out, you might only have weeks. That's a completely different ballgame. So yeah, I'm mentally prepared for that, even if it gets stressful in practice. Exchanges could get overloaded. Some may go offline during peak volume, and things will move fast. That's just the reality of bull market chaos. For me personally, I'll begin trimming my position as soon as it looks like XRP is nearing overheated territory. That doesn't mean the rally ends the moment I sell. Far from it. RSI can stay overbought for quite a while, and price can keep running much higher. The bigger point is I'm optimistic. The setup we're watching right now looks behaviorally very similar to 2017 and even echoes patterns from the last cycle. And that's exactly why I'm so excited about what's coming next. So overall, I agree with what Greg Crypto pointed out. The behavior we're seeing is consistent. People are reacting to XRP the same way they always have. And honestly, that should be reassuring. The only real reason XRP didn't climb higher in the last cycle was because of the SEX interference. Even with that roadblock, though, the same structural patterns showed up. A sharp rally, months of sideways action, and then another explosive move. That's why I'm confident that wherever this broader market heads, XRP will be right there. Moving with it, no doubt about it. And as always, let me be clear, I'm not a financial advisor. Nothing I say should be taken as financial advice, and you absolutely should not buy or sell based on my words. I'm just sharing my perspective. As an enthusiast,